Well, welcome everybody. It's a Next Homie focus group, and we're going to have a mastermind format today. I'm Chuck Vosberg, and of course, you guys know my lovely wife, Pat. We are your friends in Florida. So, we're going to talk today about the post 17th world. August 17th has come and gone. We're all still standing. So, we'd like to talk today a little bit about what's working, what's not working, what kind of problems can we work out together? Because we're all in this together. And I don't know about the states y'all are in, but it's a mess. So let's try and make some sense of it today.
State of confusion.
Yeah. So what are you seeing out on your end, Sylvia?
Insanity. I mean, just like literally brokers that are quitting NAR and losing all of their protection in the lawsuit. I actually had a broker who I admire. She's 10 years older than me. She's one of the reasons I got into real estate. And she said, I'm just waiting for things to get back to normal. She
This
means
is the
that
new
too.
normal.
Oh,
Normal
that's
is
like
the
our
way it
buyers that are
was.
waiting on the crash.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
but
is the
it
new
just breaks my
norm.
heart for her and her entire group because they're so lost. So
That's really unfortunate. I gotta tell you, we're really lucky to be in Next Home because like we've known about this for at least 2 years that I can think of. And our leadership's been talking about it and preparing us. I know our brokers have been. I know some of you are our brokers, and everybody's been getting ready, and it really puts us in a good position because like I don't know about you, Sylvia, but one thing Pat and I are seeing is that there are a lot of agents and brokers out there that were caught by surprise on this whole thing, which is shocking to me because we've been talking about it for so long, but it's kind of brought about. It seems like there's two different kinds out there right now. There are ones who are happy to get help from us because Pat and
yeah,
I mean, I don't want to say we know everything, but at least we know what we're doing on this, sort of.
they're
And
above the curve.
they're happy to accept help and understand that, hey, we're all in this together. We're going to figure it out. And then there's the ones that are digging their heels in and
Oh yeah.
they're just totally wrong and, and they don't care.
I,
Marie, is that kind of what you're
learned
seeing? Because Marie's our neighbor over here in Florida. She's got a next home brokerage nearby, and we're good friends.
in the ocean.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, she's over a little closer to the water than we are.
Mhm.
Yeah, so definitely I'm seeing that a lot of agents are kind of, they're trying to navigate it, they're trying to wrap their head around it, but they also are still trying to fall, like, how can I fall back into the way we used to do it, but still be legal? And what I've told all my agents is
Yeah.
the co-broke is dead. Just get that in your head right now and repeat that over and over. And then, of course, Mr. Dwiggins, our wonderful CEO, gave us that wonderful verbiage to use, and I have used
Yes.
it. And really, it just throws a lot of agents, for a curveball, and they just don't know how to react to that. And what do you mean? Well, what do you mean? Why can't you send? And I've told also all my agents to use, if you absolutely have to use a form, do not use the broker to broker one. Use the seller to broker one, you know, and that
Hmm.
way you don't get yourself in hot water. Um, a lot of confusion about, well, can I put it on the flyer? Can I put it on the sign? Can I put, and it's like, well,
No.
listen, that is kind of confusing because it really kind of makes you look like you're advertising then, you know, and that's again, putting yourself in the line of fire.
Yeah.
Oh, you
And
are
that's
so right.
Mhm.
And of course, as a broker, you're in a position where you can have all of your people knowing the truth, knowing the right way of doing it, and hopefully having some influence out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, and as a group, I mean, we're staying in touch, we're communicating, and that's what's important, stay, you got questions or, you know, definitely keep talking. Don't keep an
Absolutely.
island.
Yeah, 'cause we're all figuring this stuff out. And I don't believe it's anywhere near over yet.
No,
Nope.
that's, yeah, it's unfortunate. Well, what does everybody else feel? I mean, I can tell you some tales about what I've been through with a couple of agents, but I don't want to take the whole floor, so.
Well, we'd like to hear what you have to say, actually.
Yeah, go ahead. We
Yeah,
got a
'cause
we
this
got a
is
whole
learning.
lineup.
This is really
Okay,
gonna be a
well,
learning tool for all of us.
so the last time I kind of went round and round with an agent was a Keller Williams agent. And right off the bat, he wanted me to send him, what is the commission? And I gave him the verbiage, sellers open to all requests, and such and such, put it in the offer. And didn't like that. Didn't like that at all. And didn't say he wasn't going to show the property though. So I thought that was interesting. But was not happy about it. And I've heard, in the grapevine, a lot of agents are saying, well, I'm not going to show the property then, if you're not going to give me the commission. So,
Which is a violation of law.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot, if you go online and you're in some of those realtor forums, which I am,
Oh,
it's,
good Lord.
it's,
Oh.
yeah, the talk in
Wait.
there is like unbelievable.
Stay out of there. My advice is if you're in a forum and they start talking about commissions or fees, it's time for you to quit that forum as fast as you can type your exit
Yeah.
button.
Same.
You're
Yep.
right.
Yep. And there was
Are you
one
able to turn
forum
your
I was
volume up,
in,
Martin?
it's like a
Are you
mastermind
able to
forum,
tune your volume up higher?
Much higher.
and somebody put in a, right from the NAR script, the steering, definition of steering, and I thought, oh, this is great, and I grabbed that screenshot because I thought, this is good to share with my agents, remember, this is why, this is why we're getting in, or why we have gotten in trouble. And we don't want to be a victim of that again,
That's right. And none of us like any of this, but we still have to conduct business in an ethical and legal manner. So whatever.
You guys are really ahead of the pack, you and Pat, Chuck, because you knew from the very start. And I remember when I met you, said, oh, we only represent one side. And I thought, well, that's pretty noble. But the thing is, I mean, obviously, you do try to get a referral out of it, and I think that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But hey, steer clear, and then there's no confusion and no misrepresentation, because it is very, very difficult to represent both sides in the same transaction. It's tough.
It truly is. And there's lawyers out there just looking for an excuse to sue us. And if any of us think that we can't be sued individually, you got another thing coming. Because
You sure can.
Yeah.
So it's interesting in Florida, Chuck and I are single agents, but I don't know what the percentage is, 90%, I don't even know, are what's called transaction agents, transaction brokers in Florida. And a transaction broker just represents the deal. They don't really represent either the seller or the buyer, and there's no fiduciary to either party. So I see the word fiduciary being thrown around, that everyone has a fiduciary to either their buyer or their seller. And that's not true unless you're a single agent in Florida. So it's very interesting to hear all that verbiage being thrown around, if you want to say it. And it's not there. They don't have the fiduciary to either party. They're just representing the transaction. And that may be very, very different from other states on here, because we have
Sure.
people from all over the country, which is great. And so that's kind of a different perspective in Florida. I don't know about other places, but like Sylvia in Georgia, do you have a fiduciary in Georgia?
We can represent buyer, seller, or both, and we have a designated, and a broker can be forced into a dual agency just by the facts of the case. So if I list a property and one of my agents represents their buyer, I'm forced into a dual agency. So I see that changing in the near future, just based on the lawsuits.
yeah, we
And,
think the states will catch up to this.
for now, for me, it's almost to the point where I think my listing days could be over until they do that, just so I don't get myself into that situation. But
Mm.
then we still have designated agency, which is
So I hate
now
to
we
throw
pretend to
wrench in the
represent
works
them
here.
together, but separately. So,
But I mean, I think you do have absolutely you have a fiduciary duty as a transaction broker, regardless of I
yeah,
don't
I
know
do
where
too.
Well,
some of that's coming up
morally
from.
we do, yes,
Yes.
but
Yes.
legally we don't. And
Okay.
that brings up an interesting point, Marie, because sometimes what's legal and what's moral and ethical don't match up exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just did a quick, I was like, gee, am I missing something here? I've been in this business a little while, and
Yeah.
the only
Yeah.
difference between the single agency and the transaction broker, obviously, a transaction broker can represent both sides if that's what they were going to do. But I always thought it was the uh, the uh, loyalty, the loyalty. I believe
It's
that was
the
one of them.
differences are
Right.
loyalty,
The obedience.
confidentiality,
Sorry, wrong word.
and obedience. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually three things. It's the loyalty, obedience, and confidentiality. Those are the
Okay.
three
Okay.
differences. That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the rest of it goes without saying. I mean, you still have to account for their funds. You still have to,
Yes.
and I mean, yes, morally, I mean, if you, as representing one side, if you find out something, you gotta disclose it, stuff like that. But,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So
But
Corey,
I think a broker
sorry.
perspective on this real quick is
Yes.
that, I want my agents to be in a transaction broker status because of legalities.
Mhm.
So, I mean,
That makes
even though I
sense.
respect that you guys do the single agency, I think it's great. It does entrench you a little bit deeper with a client. So, that's, just broker perspective on that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Because being a broker, you definitely have more authority than we do as far as saying
But
the way
yeah.
things are. Well, we respect our
Yeah.
brokers here in Florida, and
Yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah.
earned that title fair and square.
Oh, thanks.
So
Yeah,
Corey,
when you're involved in a lawsuit or two, you sort of, and not that I've been in a ton of them, but when you are in one with another agent, you learn a thing or two and you see
oh
a few
yeah,
things. So you just, I don't know, people just, it seems like more so now than ever, it just seems like they're a little bit sue happy.
Oh, it's just begun. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Hardy
Almost
hopefully
like an
we will find out.
opportunity,
Yeah. The Hardy
is there an
lawsuit in
opportunity in there
Michigan
to
is
sue?
just the beginning.
Yeah.
There's going to be brokers, agents. There's already the Hardy lawsuit in Michigan. That's just the beginning. There's going to be agents suing associations and their franchises for forced memberships into associations. I had 12 years in the legal field. This would have been a dream come true for me as a trial paralegal. I would have been writing names down and screen printing all your shit because this would have been fun. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what they're doing right now. I know they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are. And all these idiots putting stuff on Facebook like it's $224,125. It's like, that's right.
Come on.
In the settlement, it says you won't make up, fabricate, or create anything crazy. It doesn't, not those words exactly. I am definitely paraphrasing, but none of that silly shit's going to be in there. No coding your fees, and yet they think it's a big joke. So it's like, yeah, no. If I was the paralegal working for Ketchum or the attorney in Georgia, the lawsuit, which is not settled yet, and Florida's not settled yet, I'd be taking names, man, writing down, screen printing all your stuff, just waiting. And then brokers like the one I told you about, she's a millionaire. She's got a big company and they quit NAR and they belong and own shares in a non-realtor MLS that's still sharing commissions that I had to quit
Wow.
midnight on the 16th, which was sad because, I've kind of been with
Oh
them
my
for 30
gosh.
years. But I wrote them a letter. They wrote me a wonderful letter back and said that they just feel safe. I'm like, okay. But
Wow.
That's
Wow.
being really
mind-blowing.
naive.
Yeah. Feelings are for
I've done
losers.
my best I can, but you can't convince people. They see they have a potential loss of market share, and that money is speaking louder to them than the potential of what's going to happen to them, especially her who has zero protection now, none of her agents, not protected, lawsuits not settled. We're going to know next month or in October if they approve the settlement for what Caldwell Banker, I think, and Keller Williams. That one goes to trial a month before ours. If DOJ doesn't approve theirs, which looks almost exactly like ours, then we're not going to get ours approved in November. So I'm just holding my breath for about 2 months to see what happens with that motion and see if that goes through and what DOJ does, because we're not out of the woods yet. We're just
No.
at the beginning.
No.
Yeah, like
No.
John McFarland wrote that they think they are clever until they receive a fine. But I'll be honest with you, the fines really are not that much
Ours are
monetarily,
$5,000.
right? That's
Time.
not, I mean, it is a
Kicked
lot of
out
money,
after
but
that, yeah, but-
for someone who's making a lot like that woman, I mean, $5,000 is going to be a drop in the bucket to
And
her.
ours start
Yeah.
at just 500
Right.
for certain.
5,000, yeah.
for
Well,
certain
once she gets in
situations.
the lawsuit, it's going to add
Oh,
up.
lawsuit's different.
That's
Yeah,
true.
then-
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
fast.
there's no
I know.
protection.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
I
So
just saw on our MLS today, I'm in Florida, that they have retracted the commission, or sorry, not the right word.
Concession.
The concession.
How dare
now.
you use that
That's
word?
completely retracted now based on member feedback.
Yes. I have the printout over here. I
Yeah.
was reading it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I just wrote to them last night and asking the date it was going to take effect.
Well,
And I
they're
heard back from them this morning. And
they're
it's
not
stellar.
done.
Yeah, they're not done.
They're not done. Yeah,
We're
John
just
John McFarland.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. John was just typing in the chat that it's 500 for the first offense, 1,500 for the second, or no, 2,500 for the second, and then it goes up from there. And where's John? John's
We're
here.
in Florida.
He's in Florida. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, right here in
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah.
Is that from your
Orlando
MLS or
area.
from your MLS or from your board? Huh?
There he is, Peter.
Yeah, we're in the same MLS.
I saw you, John, waving. You guys are so cute.
All right, so what's working for you guys? What kind of adaptations are serving you well so far? I know it's early on.
Yeah, what kind of conversations,
Well, in
buyers and
Idaho,
sellers?
the changes haven't affected us really that much because we've already been doing it. We've had buyer broker agreements in place from day one. We do
Yeah.
dual agency. When I do a listing on our form, it says if I bring a buyer, you give me permission to represent both sides necessary. The only changes that have really affected us, I had to do a showing on Sunday for my broker, and her buyer broker agreement had expired because they've been looking for a home for a while. So I just did one up real quick for one day, address specific.
Yeah.
Just so we have something on file. I haven't had to do that before. Other than that, it's kind of business as usual in Idaho, except for the listing, the seller's commission on our end. Because we've been doing buyer broker agreements from day one.
Yeah. George has had buyer brokers for many, many years. It's not the buyers that we're having trouble with, not even the sellers, because when I tell them what I tell them, they like it a lot.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
My first question to them is, why would you want to pay a commission for a buyer you've never met and an offer you've never seen from an agent you haven't qualified? That's where I shine. Let's let them ask for what they want and let me do my magic and negotiate in your best interest. Should you pay a commission to the buyer agent?
Yep.
Probably. Should it be your decision when you meet the buyer and see their offer and check out their agent? Yes, it should. So sign here, here, and here.
Exactly.
And they never say no. On a buyer end, it's like,
And
you don't
it,
have to be
you're
my
talking to,
client. Yeah.
and
sign
when you're talking to the, your listing, and if you offer a commission, but you put it in the offer, of course. But if you're working with another agent, you're gonna get a better caliber of buyer. They're gonna be pre-approved. You know,
Right.
they're gonna follow the steps, follow the rules. You're not dealing with the general public coming through your door all the time. So there's pros and cons,
There are.
you know.
Uneducated agents on the other side has been our big challenge.
Yes.
And sticking to our guns. It's the Galaxy Quest. Anybody here a fan besides me? Never give up, never surrender. We're holding to our guns, you know, and it's like had to have some really fun conversations is the only word with agents explaining that to them. And some of them are comical, and I think I'll write a book about them. And some of them are kind of sad, make you kind of cry. But we've not lost one fight yet, and we won't give in, and we won't give up. And we've totally decoupled commission sharing. We don't want your shared commission. That's a problem that you and your seller have now because we want your seller to pay my buyer's commission. What are we going to do with the one who's going to pass it? Not my problem. Maybe you should go back and talk to him. But he's going to pay me directly. Then they go, well, that's not right. I go, well, I'll tell you what. On the HUD statement we've been closing on for 30 years, your seller's been paying me my commission on these closings, right? Right. No, he has, right? Because it says next home, blank thousand, Caldwell Banker, whatever, blank thousand. I said, but it's coming off of the seller side, right? Okay, so if you want to pay me personally at closing, I expect a check from your company and I need a 1099 at the end of the year. And that's the only way you're going to get away with it going forward. It's not going to work. And I said, you don't want to do that. I don't want your money. The seller's paying me on the HUD statement. Let's just make it transparent for the first time in 30 years, shall we? Because that's really what we're doing here. We are making everyone happy by saying, we know you're paying it. Let's show where it came from. Because sometimes my buyers, you guys personally, my buyer's going to pay me sometimes. I might be negotiating for my buyer a property that 5 other buyers want. Maybe this is one of those times where I should let them negotiate and just say, hey, we don't need your seller's money. We're good. We're good. And
Well
this is our best offer. And so what are they going to do with that extra blank percent or whatever it is? I don't. Yeah. But those are conversations that we've had to have. And, you know, you just want to, you get to the end of the day and you go, oh, we did it again. On both sides. But yeah, it's been festive. But I've been preparing my agents for 4 years since all of this happened, the last 2 years. And since October, we had a meeting the day after we lost that lawsuit. It's like, okay, we lost. Let's talk about what's going to happen. And I've downloaded every settlement. They're all on my computer. I'm looking at one of them right now. And I've read them to them. We've explained why and why the spirit of the DOJ is what we're going after. You know, instead of what they're trying to get, you know, and solve with this. And that's hard to explain to a broker that's been told by their company that they're safe or it's okay. You know, we can still share. It's like, I don't care. We're not, and don't ask, you know. Well, we're offering, I don't care what you're offering me. I don't want your money, you know. And those are hard. I had one
Sylvia,
girl. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Samantha was asking, you know, what do you say on the buyer side? What's your script for them?
When I'm signing up a buyer.
Yes.
Right. So we've always had buyer brokers. So now we've had to I've really retrained the agents. Like, do you really want to represent a buyer that you just met on Zillow, right? That you may show one property to today, right? Or do you just want to represent them today? And maybe you don't want to represent them after you meet them. So let's just do a 1-day, this property only agreement. Boom. You like it? I get paid. You don't like it? You move on. If you like me, you and I are going to talk about a deeper relationship. And the other thing is we meet them in our office, not in the driveway. You are in big trouble with me if you meet somebody in a driveway to sign a contract. You need to get it signed ahead of time. Meet them somewhere else if you can't meet them at the office, but not at the house. And then if they haven't signed the contract, you got to leave them. I'm sorry. Bye. And that's okay. And that's hard to do, you know, for an agent that's been in it a while. It's like you've had this pattern of, oh, okay, well, I'll love them now and then they'll love me later. Can't do that anymore. No one's had any problem with it. My my newest agents, this is like normal for them because I've been preaching this crap to them for the whole time they've worked for me. They're just like ready, you know. It's the older agents that have had to kind of relearn it, and now they're champions of it. So, but on the
Good.
buyer, it just depends. Like, what kind of relationship do they want? That's what they're going to get. If it's one day, good, cool, yeah. Non-exclusive, sure. I don't care.
I think Peter had something he wanted to add. Go ahead, Peter.
We have not done buyer agreements up until recently, even though they've been in existence for probably almost as long as I've been doing real estate, which is well over 20 years. But we've been meeting our buyers in the office. We have a consultation with them. Now, there's the exception where somebody wants to see one property. They found it on Zillow. They want to see it now. We'll go out and meet them. But if I'm going to do anything with you, you're coming back to my office, or we're meeting here sometime in the future, and we're going to sit down and go through the whole buying process and explain to you every step of the way what's needed to be done. We've also gotten a copy of a driver's license so that we can verify that it is a real person. Plus, that information is helpful when we go to write a contract. So it's made it easy. On the seller side, we have been doing a net sheet for many, many years, and we've been breaking out the commission. I'm talking now with co-broke situation. We've been breaking that out so that we show, you know, what portion is going to be paid on the seller's side, what portion the seller was paying on the buyer's side, and what they potentially would have for seller concessions, so that the seller has kind of a worst case scenario in front of them. And I found that that's been very beneficial. And now that we've gone to changing the way we do business, we haven't really had to change it on the seller side. It's just a matter of how we're handling it within the transaction. So even though it's different, it really isn't different. It's just a matter of how are you going to fund the transaction? Where are the dollars coming from?
I heard one thing, Peter, you said, when you're meeting the buyer now, since the 17th, you're signing something no matter what, right?
Yes,
Good, okay. I wanted to clarify that. 'Cause
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
And
something.
and that would be done obviously before we go through the front door. I'm not very highly active, but if I was going out with a buyer, at the very least, even if we had to sign it in the driveway, but it would be pre-filled out before we went in there. We wouldn't be going in the house.
It's you know,
Not
just
happening with me.
it's hard. And it's like, y'all just don't meet them in the driveway, meet them at the coffee shop, meet
Yep.
them. If they can't make it to the office, our office is in the center of everything, and it's a small little office, but there is a power of negotiation when you are sitting on one side of a desk and they are on the other side, and you have already printed out your buyer and you've pressed it in your little bookmaker, which we do. And now you've added to that, before they've got there, you've added in their name on the front. And if you have time, the property you're going to look at on the back of that, and you press it, what does that take? 5 whole minutes, folks? I mean, and they walk in and you've got that ready for them. I
Yep.
mean, that's a relationship. Even if it only lasts one day, great. But you know, that if you're going to be vying for buyers, practicing now, right now, while it's new and fresh every single time. I get it. We get Zillow leads still, and our agents, you know, they have like a little group text between each other when one of them gets, oh, I got somebody from Cochrane. Oh, congratulations. And they're all big support of each other. But used to, you just meet them at the house. You'd qualify them after, you know, you'd make sure they were, you know, you'd make sure they were good, but we can't do that anymore.
In the old days, that was maybe a way of being able to add somebody to your list of buyers or potential buyers. In this day and age, it's like I would rather just have them come to my office, meet me.
Yeah, me too.
We do the presentation,
Mhm.
whatever your presentation is, that's not necessarily important, but do the presentation. We get ID because that kind of protects me as well, because now I know you're a real person. And if God forbid something does happen, at least we have some sort of a lead. I've got cameras on my building, so I can
We
see
do
you
too.
walking in.
Yep.
You know,
Same.
it's
That's
somebody
why I
that's
want them to meet at my office. I mean, they're in living color, you know, on 16
it's
cameras. So
and somebody that is going to do something criminal is
not showing up.
probably not going to show up to your office.
Yeah, precisely.
I mean, they might, but probably not.
Probably not. You know,
You all
don't
have
wanna do it in the
forewarn?
driveway.
What's
You all
Yeah,
that?
have
love for-
forewarn?
yeah, and I
Yeah,
use
it's
it
really
every-
great. Forewarn, it's an app.
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't used it.
It's
You should
really
use it.
wonderful.
Little quick, you can't use it on your in-laws and people like that. Breaking the rules, kind of like checking credit for your
One
brother.
is free for us on our MLS. It doesn't
Yes,
cost.
ours too, yeah.
It
I
is free
love-
for
I
us
too.
love Forewarn, yeah, really works.
It might be free in your MLS. What MLS are you in, Peter?
It is in our MLS. We're in the same one as you, I
Yeah,
think.
you're in Stellar, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
free.
Yeah,
You
give
should,
it a
it's
yeah,
free.
shot.
yeah, it's
Yep.
wonderful. If it's
It's
great.
free almost everywhere I've encountered.
Okay. Okay.
Or at least any of the large MLSs.
Okay.
Good. Definitely worth doing because we want to keep safe. All right, so we had some really good comments in here. One thing that's kind of a common theme here, Peter talked about it, John talked about that, the education is important, and particularly with other agents. Does anybody here have any strategies for uh, in a kind way educating the other agent? Because that's one thing that we're running across here is that
Mhm.
we're having to help.
I frequently equate it to a business transaction. So, Chuck, if you and I were going to get into a business transaction and we're best buds, everything is great. We agree on everything, but we're going to get it reduced to writing, and we're going to have an attorney do that for us. You're going to pay for your attorney. I'm going to pay for my attorney. And maybe we decide on some other financial arrangement afterwards, but that's initially how we're going to go in. This is what we're doing now. It's putting at least the recognition of the liability on the proper side.
That's exactly right. So, Pat, do you want to share the scenario? We talked with another next home broker earlier today.
Yeah.
It was kind of wanting to brainstorm where another broker is flat out in the wrong, but digging their heels in.
Yeah, she said, one of my agents, I'll just read exactly what she said, is negotiating a deal and the agent is refusing to sign the seller to buyer broker agreement. They are insisting on using the seller broker to buyer agreement. And it's Dana Topol, by the way. She asked this, I think it might have been on the next homepage. I don't remember. Oh, she messaged me. That's what it was. And she's under her understanding that A is an absolute no for us to use. And she wanted to know what the thoughts were. And then I messaged her back and she said, one of her agents wrote the offer for the buyer and the listing agent has the seller broker to buyer broker agreement, option A, and isn't willing to have the seller sign seller to buyer broker, option B signed. And that's kind of where we're at with that. So I know that the broker to broker we're not doing, but what about the other? Anyone have any thoughts on any of that? So Dana's unable to join us today, but that's why another reason we're recording it so that we can brainstorm on that.
I'm confused.
I'm confused too.
Your documents are a little
let me
different than ours.
let
but-
me clarify it.
All right, you clarify it.
So the offer was written where the seller would offer a concession, which would then be used to pay for the seller's or the buyer's broker. The seller's broker is insisting that it be written up where the commission goes to the seller's broker and then the seller's broker splits it with the buyer's broker. In other
Yeah.
words, they want to do it the old way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things go back to normal, lady, remember?
Mm.
Yeah.
John McFarland wrote, same here, no option A, prefer C with conversation with the seller to expect a request for compensation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that option A and stuff, that's specific to our form.
I was going to say, those are
Those are
specific.
Florida forms, so excuse that
Yeah, so-
language here today.
So
Yeah.
option
it's-
A is broker to broker. Option B is seller to buyer's broker. And option C is no compensation. And this is what is
Right.
on the listing agreement in Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
Florida only, folks.
And that's going to change because it's all screwed up anyway.
It is.
The way it's worded.
Georgia's contracts aren't perfect, but one form that they have, which is just a broker compensation form, it's got 2 typos in it. I've already written to them twice and they haven't fixed them yet, but it has a place for the compensation. So buyer's broker receives blank, and on the other side, it's like from blank. And so you could literally put 15 bananas, 14 bananas by buyer, and 1 banana from the seller. You could literally do that in that one slot. The next line down is seller broker. Well, when you're making an offer, you can't call them and go, hey, what'd y'all list that house for? So I can put your commission on the other side when I make your offer, because that's illegal. So you have to leave that blank and you send it to them. I've gotten 3 houses under contract and the selling agent forgot to put their commission in that part. So, yeah, but, they've told us, we fought with them. Well, we're co-brokering, we'll pay that. It's like, don't want it from you, want it from your seller. You know, don't want it from you, I want it from your seller. And we won. Caldwell Banker, Keller Williams, and that lady that I told you is waiting for everything to get back to normal. All of them stamped their feet and got mad and all face and stuff. And then they said, okay, Sylvia, you win. And they went back and they did it our way. But we wrote really good offers.
Mhm.
And we just held our ground. But that form helped because it said from whom to whom. And when the one broker said, well, we're at Caldwell Banker, we got our own settlement. We're still, and it's like, I get it. I said, this is not a problem. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will go with you and present the offer to your seller, and I'll explain the whole thing to him.
That's what we told Dana to do.
And because that's how I ride
Yep.
under the law, right? I'm
Yeah, we
allowed to
suggested
do
that.
that. And then
Mhm.
Carl, I'll explain everything, and then I'll leave, and then you guys can figure it out. But I will go and explain this to the seller. At 15 minutes later, I got my contract signed just like I wrote it. Because the last thing he wants Sylvia to do is meet with his seller.
And that was my point.
Mhm.
I think the problem is not the consumer. The problem is the agents.
Yes.
And
Yes.
particularly the brokers, and some of them are coming down from their corporate, from their franchise. It's like, hold
Well,
your guns. Well, it's
The,
like,
the only agents are only going to be as smart as the brokers are,
and there's
for the most part, not a
so
total.
confused. These agents are, one girl was like, but it's going to be blank percent. She was adding up, and I know I can't talk percentages, but she was going, okay, so 5 apples and 5 apples, and then your 5 apples is 15 apples. I got to go back to my seller and tell him it's going to be half more. I'm like, okay, baby, let's start over from the beginning. Okay, so you got 10 apples, and your seller's going to give 5 to me. And then she goes, but what are we going to do with the other? I'm like, okay, so she never understood it.
The reality is the amount of compensation, generally speaking, is probably not changing. It's just a matter of how is it being shown on the documents in legal language that's behind it, and then who's actually funding it.
That's right. So
It's still the same thing in the end.
I'll take you 20 years back. And I'm sorry, 20 years ago, I opened a discount real estate in my area. I became famous and infamous at the same time in my area. I had 80 something listings by the end of 3 months because I did it a certain way. I offered a flat fee. And if somebody else, guess what? If another company wanted to write an offer on my property, guess what they got to do? They got to add it in their contract, and the seller got to decide based on the quality of the offer. 20 years ago, I trained everybody in Middle Georgia how to do that with that company that I own.
Mhm.
Oh, you're the one.
I sold it. I'm the one. I sold the company, and the lady that owns it now is basically thankful to me that I set that in motion. Well, now we're back here again. And I'm saying to brokers that I've known for 30 years, like, remember 20 years ago when you had to write an offer on one of my properties? It's back to that, but now it's all of us. It's all of
Well,
us.
here's a fun little interjection. So I had a little dance go on way before the 17th of August. I think this was actually back in June or July. I had a buyer, wonderful little buyer, who I explained everything to, and it was before we even had to have the buyer brokerage agreement. But I said, oh, I'm going to practice this
Yeah.
because I'll tell you, to be honest, I've been in business over 20 years, and I remember I have trauma from this buyer brokerage agreement because I was brand new agent, and I had was down on a beach office. I was a Remax agent for many, many years. And so lady came in and I said, well, I have this lovely little buyer brokerage agreement, for you to sign because we're going to be working together. And she said, fine. And she signed it. And I said, okay, now I'm going to work on, a little list of properties to show you. Come back in about an hour and, we'll get cracking on it. And she came back. She went to the beach, got her friend. They came back and she came up to me and she said, and this is what I'm going to do with your buyer brokerage agreement. And I was crushed, absolutely crushed. And I said, what's the problem? It just means that, you and I are going to work together, And she said, well, my friend says I shouldn't sign anything and I don't need to. So, and I said, okay. And we didn't work together, but, it left kind of an imprint on me. And so from then on, I just, tried my best to be a good little agent and, friendly and accommodating. And yeah, I got stabbed quite a bit, but I worked without the net, and I think there's a lot of agents like that. So this buyer broker, I think as a broker, I see the value in that.
Yeah.
I think it's
I do too.
wonderful. And I try to tell my people, I say, listen, now you're going to have accountability. Now you're going to have some safety in this, because they can't just, go to somebody else without
they can't.
problems.
And you need
So-
to remind, it's like, you don't have to sign this. If you can go out and find another agent that'll show you a house without signing this,
Yeah.
I would question the integrity of an agent that would break the law to be able to show you a property.
Exactly. And so in a way, this buyer brokerage agreement is kind of a litmus test,
I like it.
on what you got, so you're going to get, someone who's a snake. Well,
Yeah.
you're going to see if they're a snake, right? Now you don't need to work with that,
Right.
right? If they have a little hissy fit.
And when you're talking to the buyers and they're signing, they go, well, I don't want to pay you. I want the seller to pay you. It's like, well, you just told me right there to ask the seller for it. So why don't want you pay you at all? I said, why do you say that right now? You haven't even seen what the offers are going to be like. Maybe I can get you a much better price on the property if you do pay some of this. Have you
Bottom
thought?
line though is that
That-
they need representation.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
need somebody in
So
your corner. Yeah.
yeah, you need me to represent you. I'm good at negotiating. Who's to say you won't pay some of it because you'll get $5,000 or more off the price of the property?
Well, and the buyer broker agreements are not that scary.
They're
We've been
not.
doing them from day one.
Yeah.
It's just, here's our relationship in writing at the beginning.
I think
Yeah.
one of the
And like
keys
Sylvia
is-
said, if you don't want to work with me, don't work with me. That's
Don't work
okay.
with me. I'm good.
I'm not going to go home and cry. I won't.
You don't, it's like, well, I only want to work with you for 3 months. It's just like, I think Keith said this, like, okay, let's just make it 2. It's
Great.
like, well, I was only work with you for a month. It's like, let's just do it for 2 weeks. And
I
they go, I only
signed
want
one.
to use the week. It's like, let's just do it for 2 days. If you don't like me after 2 days, let's just move.
I signed one Sunday for one address. Just CYA. It's not that big of a deal. It's really,
Doesn't it feel good though, when you sign it, I'm done with them in 5 days?
sometimes.
They're going to have
So
to ask
the-
me to keep representing them after that. So,
The buyer agreement has been around for a long time for
Yeah.
most of us. Some states have had it as a requirement.
mm,
Typically, we haven't used it because most of us are not confident with it.
that's it.
And there are a few agents out there that use it, but buyers coming in, because we're not confident with it, we didn't use it, and it's our own fault. I think right now it puts us all on an even playing ground, because we're all going to use it, whether we're good or bad. We're all going to be using it. But the question is, can you show your value to justify the compensation that you want to put on it, and to convince your buyer that, yes, I am a good negotiator and
Mhm.
I will find a way to get you most or all of that compensation if you want me to.
We're gonna figure it out together. I went to my ABR class the year that I became a broker. I got my ABR. Sylvia Shellnut, she scared the living bejesus out of me in that class because I came from a legal field. So She was saying these are all the reasons you're going to get sued by pretending like you don't represent your buyer, implied representation, and the things you can't do. And now you have expertise in it, and now you're getting your ABR, so you're really a buyer expert, and you're going to sit in front of somebody and go, I just want you to be my customer. She said, you're a lawsuit waiting to happen. So it was kind of at that point that, and that was long before everybody in Georgia was really getting into doing the buyer brokerage. I'd sign them up every time I could. And I would tell them, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm an expert in this business, and it's going to be really hard for me to keep this thing shut. I'm going to want to tell you stuff. And if you
Over
don't
the
sign
years-
this, I can't tell you that stuff, and I can't work with you. And so I practiced that because she scared me.
I don't think people are afraid to sign something. I think it's a matter of
Agents are
explaining it to
afraid
them.
to.
Absolutely. Agents are the one that are the problem.
That's it. Don't be
I've
afraid.
I've had a number of buyers over the years say, and how much am I going to owe you? Thinking the
Yeah.
first day they meet us, how much are they
Yeah.
going to have to pay us?
Yeah.
It's not the consumer, it's us that's the problem.
I have an agent, Dawn. Her buyers 9 times out of 10 will say to her, it's like, Dawn, you just didn't make enough on this transaction. But they say it in writing too. It's like, you should have been paid more. So, but
Sometimes that's true.
yeah, you earn your value, and she does. She goes crazy in love with them and takes good care of them all the way through the transaction and checks up with them for months after. And then every year on their anniversary,
Mhm.
and Christmas, so that's quality of service. And you get that with an agent that cares about what they're doing, and buyers can see that you do it or you don't. So if you're a good agent, don't be afraid to sign it. And you don't have to work with that buyer if they don't sign it. Just move on.
We've got a question here from Marie Drew. Is anybody here submitted an offer with your compensation as part of the offer? I know you have, Sylvia.
I don't have my camera on, but I have.
Who's that speaking?
John,
John,
Oh, it's John.
I know it's John. I
Sorry.
can tell his voice.
You recognize his
I
voice.
do.
He needs to run in there and stand
So
next
what
to
happened,
you.
John?
it was right before the commissions left our MLS, and they were offering something lower. And I had a buyer's agreement signed with my buyer. So I submitted the seller to broker compensation request at what I had arranged with my buyer. And 30 minutes later, the offer came back accepted, all signed, initial, dotted, including the seller to buyer's broker addendum, rider, whatever we're calling that thing. And it was like, no big sweat.
So
What?
you submitted
Nobody
it
died?
with
Nobody died.
seller paid some of it or all of it or none of it?
Can you turn your volume back up?
I just turned the volume up. Can you ask your question again, Marie?
I said the offer that you submitted, did the seller accept paying some of it, all of it, or none of it?
You want to repeat it?
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Did that make sense? Did
They paid the entire amount I asked for.
wow.
Very good.
That's interesting.
That's the way it's done right there.
But of course, we're in a different market. So what happens when
True.
we're in another kind of market? That may not be the case.
Well, then it's going to suck.
Well,
So I had an
We'll figure it
experience, if
out.
I could share real quick, I'll make it real quick.
Yeah.
So this was way before any of this was needed. So I just was trying again, just, practicing. So I had a little buyer and I had my buyer sign the buyer brokerage, and I explained to her the situation that, if the seller doesn't want to pay some of it, she'd be on the hook to pay that. Fine, no problem. Submitted the offer and included the compensation in there to the buyer broker. It was a small amount. And the response was absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so we the buyer and I talked about it, and we said, okay, well, let's resubmit the offer, and since I'm going to be paying your amount, I want you to take that out of the offer. So it was a lower offer, of course. Totally ticked off the seller. And the seller was so upset, and the agent was telling me how upset the seller was, how could I do this? How could I do this? So then the seller came back for that offer and came back at full list price, saying at full list price plus the amount that I was asking for compensation, and said that's how we're going to roll. So your buyer's going to pay additional money if you want me to pay for you, right? And so that didn't fly either. So we just went cold, and I told my buyer, I said, this is not a giving seller. This is a seller that doesn't want to cooperate. So, we could keep looking. It's up to you. I want you to be happy. I want you to, whatever you want. And so we kept looking. Then all of a sudden I get a phone call, probably about a week later. The agent calls me up and says, Marie, I've had a really good year. Why don't I just pay your commission? I was floored.
Yep, that'll work.
I was floored. Yeah, of course. Yeah, at the time that would have worked because it was okay.
Marie,
But
that's because it's you.
I said, no way. I said, you work hard for your money, I said, no.
I
But
think some
guess what? This is the future. It's coming. This was a Coldwell Banker agent, by the way. So
I think some sellers just
curious
get
what you guys thought.
some sellers just get stuck on the fact that I'm not going to pay the other side of the transaction. So if we take this to seller concessions, which is a totally different issue, but take it to seller concessions for closing costs, there are some of them that say, under no circumstances will I pay it, even if we inflate the price in order to offset it. They're not willing to do it because they won't pay on the behalf of the buyer. And that's when you have to say, time to move on. Not
Yeah.
every deal is going to go together.
Yeah.
So now we've got compensation. It's just one more component of the transaction that we need to negotiate. But we're the professionals. We need to figure out a way to make it work. And
But
we have to say that 90%
that seller got aggressive, is what my point was in telling the story. Because what you would think is initially, hey, well, my net's going to be this, obviously I'm going to pay a little bit of that, but didn't see it that way.
if they're not focused on that net line, then
Yeah.
they're not real about doing the transaction. And that's when it's time to move on, no matter how much you love the house. I mean, there's another one out there that'll meet the requirements that you have.
I agree.
That's right. Yep. It's all about the net. Net proceeds is the only thing that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, you guys were great today.
This has been a really great conversation.
Yeah, it was
Thank you,
really
everybody, for coming today and for participating. We always want to respect your time, so we always try to end up on time. But thanks again. This has been a great conversation, and we'll see you back in here in 2 weeks in the next Homey Focus group, where we're going to have Jeff McCarthy as our guest instructor. He is a lending expert, and he's going to tell us a few things that we really need to know from the lending side of this, with this whole new world that we're dealing with right now. So I hope you all have a great week. Pat, any closing words?
September 10th, 1 p.m. Eastern. I hope you all can make it. We like seeing your pretty faces.
We'll see
Sounds
you
great.
then.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.